Nowhere, a Jack Reacher short story, adapted from a story written by Stuart Murphy, read by Julian Bane. Reacher looked at the odometer in the clattering old Ford and saw the numbers all turn at once, clocking in another 1,000 miles. There were more miles on the car than he had seen since being stationed on a small Pacific island with a fat general named Bullymore. General Bullymore had an old Army-issue Jeep that he kept directly outside his command hut. He refused to walk anywhere in the humid Pacific weather and used a clapped-out machine to take him to the mess hall, the barracks, and anywhere else he fancied going. He ran up thousands of miles on a tiny island with no more than 10 miles of paved road. It came to no one's surprise when the Jeep was found in a ditch halfway between the command hut and the airplane hangar, with the general dead behind the wheel. The medics confirmed it as a heart attack. The engine of the Ford spluttered and coughed, but Reacher kept it going down Route 93 until he hit Interstate 15 towards California. He had picked up the old machine after a scuffle outside a bar in some no-name part of Nevada from a sympathetic old soldier whose name he never got. It was unfortunate business, but it didn't feel like the type of place where strangers would be given a bed and 3 hot meals if they found themselves on the wrong side of the law, which Reacher calculated he would have, sooner or later. He would have liked to thank that old man, but by the time he got out of the Las Vegas traffic and back on the road, he wasn't sure the old rust bucket would have managed the return trip. The dashboard, what was left of it anyway, was untouchable, and Reacher tried to keep his hands off the wheel as much as he could. Glad they had built the road so straight, he could use his knees to hold it steady. Looking at the rest of the interior, springs shooting up through the seats, leather peeling away from the metal, he dreaded to think what condition the engine was in. He didn't have to think for long. About an hour outside Vegas, the noise inside the cab, already at deafening levels, doubled. And just in case Reacher was unsure of the situation, smoke started to bellow into the cab, causing him to choke and spit. He pulled the Ford to the side of the road, opened the door, and staggered to a safe distance, trying to catch his breath in the hot California heat. The old truck was dead, and Reacher had neither the tools nor the knowledge to fix it. So there he stood, boiling by the side of the highway with his thumb out, looking back up at the long stretch of empty highway and trying to remember the last time he saw a car. Bill McRae tossed an apple core out the driver's side window and quickly put the glass back up. The air conditioning didn't work as effectively with the window down, and there was no way Bill would survive in this heat without it. He was not what people would call a cultured or well-traveled man, but now he found himself in the scorched, dry desert in a rental car, with sweat dripping down his back. The Chevrolet was driving nicely, although it didn't live up to the flutter he felt in his stomach when the pretty but bored cashier had given him the keys. His mind raced with the image of him driving through the desert in a hot convertible Corvette, wind blowing through what was left of his hair, and rock and roll music on the radio. As it happened, he was inside a dull gray car, listening to the only station he could get, a Mexican mariachi band. The straightness of the road had caused him to lose interest and look for stimulation elsewhere, so when his efforts to retune the radio and double-check his position on the map caused the car to drift off the highway and onto the dirt and dust, that's when he noticed his windshield was almost filled by the back end of a truck, which was now only a few feet away. His chubby legs seized up, jamming down on the brake pedal, as his hands moved with uncharacteristic quickness to swerve past the tail end and come to a complete stop inside a plume of desert dust. Breathing heavy and gasping for air, he looked up to see a mountain of a man, with his arm outstretched and a large thumb poking up through a clenched fist. Reacher had seen the car coming, and although it hadn't slowed down, it did appear to be pulling over. It moved slowly on the side of the road before braking suddenly, firing a barrage of stone and gravel against his legs and torso. He turned his head to shield his eyes, and when he looked back he saw a short, squat man behind the wheel, with a face as white as the only cloud in the sky. He walked over to the passenger side and opened the door, gasping with relief at the cold air rushing out all around him. Then it was gone, swallowed up by the unforgiving sun. The pudgy little man looked shaken, but otherwise unhurt. "Ah, car trouble?" Bill McRae was not good in tense situations. His first thought was that he almost killed this man. His second was to make up for it as quickly as he could. Guilt rode shotgun with Bill most days, but today it stood at his passenger door, letting out all the cold air. "Yeah, you know anything about radiators or engines?" asked Reacher. "No, sorry, I don't usually drive much. I'm sorry I almost hit you. You need help in calling someone." "There's no one to call. I could use a ride into town, or a bus station though." "Yeah, sure, get in." Bill was surprised at the way he handled the situation, then immediately regretted it, realizing he had just invited a stranger into his car. A stranger with fists like bowling balls. But at least the door was closed and the AC was picking up again. "What's your name?" "I'm Bill McRae." "Reacher, Jack Reacher." "Pleased to meet you, Jack. Where are you heading?" "Nowhere special. West, I guess." "You?" "I'm actually on my way to meet a woman." "Is that so?" "Yeah, she lives out here somewhere. I've got directions. You from around here?" "I'm not really from anywhere, but I can read a map and directions pretty good." Reacher took the directions from the dashboard and unfolded the map on his lap. "Thanks. You can be my navigator. Call it the price of the ride into town, okay?" Bill smiled as he said it, hoping it would come across as jovial and friendly. "Glad to help, Bill." Reacher was a little unsure about the sweating man in the driver's seat. He seemed harmless enough, if a little jumpy, and figured some conversation would calm him down. "So, Bill, is this a blind date?" Hoping he had picked up on the way the man had spoken about the unnamed woman. No, I've spoken to her before, only on the phone, though. I met her on a dating site, you know." As soon as he said it, Bill knew he had made a mistake. "I'm sorry, a what?" "A dating website, on the internet." No, not really." "You don't use the internet, or you don't use dating sites?" "Well, yeah, why would you?" Bill looked at the large man dressed like a hobo drifter, and he knew that women would still prefer him over who he was. An overweight midlife crisis waiting to happen, although he guessed it already had started. "Not really. Never had much call to," Reacher replied. "Well, of course not, but it's the future, my friend. It's going to be everywhere soon, believe me." "You know a lot about it then?" "Yeah, I sell it. Well, computers anyway. But I'm telling you, soon everyone is going to be on the internet. It's the new way to meet people." "And you met this woman on there?" asked Reacher. "Yeah, on a dating site. You put in what you're looking for, and, it matches you up with someone suitable." "Sounds complicated. Can't you just meet someone in a bar or a restaurant?" "That's old style. No one does that anymore. This way when you meet someone, you have some things in common." "All right. What do you have in common, then?" "Well, she works out here in California for a computer programming company. You heard of Silicon Valley, right?" "Yeah, I've heard of it." "Well, a lot of computer companies have set up there. It's near San Jose. She works freelance for them and other companies from there to San Diego." Reacher looked down at his map, trying to find a town of some sort that matched the directions he was reading. "And she lives out here?" "Yeah, somewhere," Bill replied. "Look, this is leading us off the highway. It doesn't look like there's much there." "Yeah, I know. Weird, huh? She says it's a little remote, but there's a town nearby, although I couldn't find it on the map." At that point, a little alarm went off somewhere in the back of Reacher's mind, and his gut gave a convincing growl. "Well, if we find it, you can drop me there. I'm sure they have a bus station or something. I think it's the next turnoff." "Sure, no problem. And, thanks for helping me." They drove in silence for a while, the road turning from asphalt to dirt after a few miles. After 40 minutes, Reacher double-checked the map and came to the conclusion they were either at the town or had passed it. But still there was nothing in any direction but flat desert sand and small, dry flowers. "I think we're here. according to the map and the directions, Reacher said, looking over at Bill. But there's nothing here. I must have gotten the miles wrong. The sweat had built up around Bill so much, he felt he had a thick layer of oil covering his whole body, and he was getting desperate to reach his destination, not only to meet the woman of his dreams, but to ditch his monstrous passenger before anything bad happened. He had said too much to the stranger already, and he was ready to part ways now that he was very close. Up ahead, just coming into view, was a shape. He couldn't make it out, but he knew it was something, and it gave him hope. He smiled to himself and pointed it out. There, I see something. I knew we were close. Reacher squinted against the harsh light and saw the small box shape in the distance getting bigger, and he knew what it was. It's a phone booth. Guess there is a town here, he said, although not fully convinced. As they got closer, they could see the road stretching further and further into the distance, with nothing but barren land on all sides. Stop here, said Reacher. Bill pulled up alongside a smashed and gunshot phone booth. They both got out and looked at the broken structure and surveyed the landscape around them. Bill walked into the booth and read the number printed under the handle. This is it. This is our number. This is the number she gave me whenever I called her. This doesn't make any sense. Bill was getting worked up. His sweat patches, already large under his arms and on his back, grew larger. His breathing quickened. Are you sure? But Reacher knew he was sure. He knew it was a scam and someone had played a terrible joke on this kind and portly man. As Reacher stood under the blazing sun and watched Bill McRae pace back and forth, muttering to himself and working through everything he thought he knew, the phone rang. Bill stopped and looked at the phone, looked at Reacher and back at the ringing handset, then lurched forward and lifted the receiver. Bill, said a husky voice on the other side of the line. Stephanie, is that you? I'm here, but there's nothing here but this phone booth. What's going on? The line crackled every time he spoke, and he stared at the graffiti and bullet holes and wondered just what the hell was going on. Yes, it's me, Bill. Listen, there's been a change of plan. Who's that with you? He stuck his head out the side and looked around, seeing nothing for miles. You can see me? Where are you? He asked, getting frantic. Reacher listened to the one-sided conversation and started to scan the horizon. He was being watched, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He slowly pivoted 360 degrees and kept an eye out for a glint of binoculars or a scope. He saw nothing. You need to come meet me. Leave the big man behind. It won't be good for either of you if he gets back in that shitty little car of yours. Bill listened to the words and became very cold in the boiling heat. He had been warned by people, mainly his mother, about meeting people on the internet, but he had shrugged it all off, blinded by the love he felt for this woman. But you said, he trailed off, his brain trying desperately to think of what to do. Forget what I said. You done real good making it out here. Now, if you want to make it back, I suggest you ditch your travel partner and come meet me. You don't want us coming for you. Us? Who's us? Bill panicked and dropped the receiver, his hands shaking, his whole body trembling as he replayed the last 8 months over and over in his mind. Reacher watched the breakdown happen and waited. He knew there was trouble, but out here he could see it coming. Bill, said Reacher. The man Reacher had thought to be a little naive, an innocent man who had been taken by a scam because he had wanted so much to be loved, stopped shaking and stood up straight. He took the receiver in his hand and put it back into its cradle. It's the money. She wants my money, Bill said, looking directly into Reacher's eyes, the first time he had done so since they met. What money? What did she say? Reacher asked. She said I have to leave you here and go meet her, but I know she just wants the money. His voice cracked and sounded like it had on the badly connected phone line. What money, Bill? Did you bring money with you? Reacher knew it was a delicate situation. No, it's all in a bank account. I got lucky on the stock market a few years ago. I took stock instead of a wage when I was working at Microsoft in the early 90s, and the price just went up and up. I was going to sell it and retire with Stephanie, but she just wants the money. I can tell. What did she say to you, Bill? She said I should go to her, that I wouldn't want them coming for me. I don't know who she's with." But before Reacher could answer, the phone rang again. Bill picked it up and said nothing. "Last chance, Bill. Get in the car in the next 10 seconds and drive straight down the road, or I'm coming for you," said the voice he had once trusted. Then the line went dead. Bill stood and stared at Reacher, then walked to the front of his car and faced the empty road and shook his head defiantly. Reacher watched this and walked to the back of the car. "Get in the car and pop the trunk, Bill." Bill got in behind the wheel and flicked the switch. Reacher fished around at the back of the rental, searching for anything he could use, and finding only a lug wrench. He kept it low, knowing he was still being watched, and waited. After 30 seconds, he spotted a cloud of dust in the distance. He could tell it was an SUV, and it looked like it was traveling fast. It was coming from the distant hills, and he knew they had been watching him with binoculars. He made his mind up then that this was an amateur operation, although even amateurs can have guns. Reacher went to the front of the car and started a slow walk down the road. The SUV was gaining fast. It would be on top of him within a minute. He waited 30 seconds, 40, 50. He stepped to the side of the road, then raised his arm up high and behind his head, and tossed the lug wrench with all his might at the driver's side of the window. It spun in the air like a four-sided boomerang and smashed into the glass and disappeared. The SUV jerked sideways off the road, killing a few cacti before trying to right itself. The back wheels spun in the sand and dirt and tried to regain traction but failed, spinning out of control as Reacher started running after it. He pulled his t-shirt up over his mouth and tried to shield his eyes as he ran through the dust, catching up as the SUV came to a spinning stop. He went for the passenger side, yanking open the door and pulling the man out, delivering a clubbing blow to the bridge of the nose and shattering his face. He saw the driver leaning over the wheel. The lug wrench had struck him in the head. He was no threat and turned his attention to the back seats. That's when the back passenger window exploded outward with a massive eruption, and Reacher felt the buckshot just miss his head. He saw only one man in the back seat, a poor shot even with a single-action shotgun. He got his arms up into the broken window and grabbed the man by the shirt, knocking the gun away before it could be reloaded. He pulled the man headfirst through the window and threw him to the ground, where he clamped a large hand around the throat and started asking questions. "Where is she? Tell me who she is and where I can find her, or you're gonna end up like your friends here." The man rolled his eyes and shook his head and confessed he knew nothing, even after Reacher broke the trigger finger on his right hand. That's when the rushing in his ears started to drain away, and he could hear Bill shouting from the phone booth, "Jack! Jack! She's gone!" Reacher looked at the man on the ground, then swung a right fist right into his temple, knocking him out cold. He went to the back seat and took out the shotgun, searching the other man for weapons, and found a small handgun on one and a very large Smith & Wesson 5.86 on the other. Walking back to the car and McRae, he looked at the guns. Amateurs indeed, using old guns probably stolen from Daddy's collection. The shotgun especially. You really didn't see single barrels that much these days. She called again. She said she was gone, and we will never find her, and to not bother looking. She said those guys were just hired to do a job, to take me to her and get the money from me. Reacher nodded and tossed the guns behind the phone booth, but kept the 5.86. "Yeah, let's get out of here." He took the keys from Bill and got in behind the driver's seat. Bill got in beside him and slumped down low, dejected and defeated. "I really thought she loved me. I was a fool," he murmured. Reacher started the engine and felt the AC turn the hot air cold as he drove away from the isolated phone booth in the middle of nowhere.